One of the most exciting and unique instruments ever invented was the saxophone. Well known for its curved shape and ability to play in many different musical settings, it is a versatile instrument. With credible sources from the University of Illinois, the NPR, and experienced saxophonists, the saxophone, with its unique intonation and color and sound, is a staple in music literature. To better understand the saxophone, we must first look at its origin. Invented in 1814 by Adolphe Sax in Belgium, the saxophone is 200 years old. The four main types of saxophones known today are the soprano saxophone, the alto saxophone as we have here, the tenor saxophone, and the bass saxophone. The saxophone was first invented to be able to play a brass instrument and a woodwind instrument at the same time. The alto saxophone today of its modern time is known just to be a woodwind instrument, but one with a unique intonation that mimics that of a brass instrument. The saxophone's role in music literature is best known for jazz. The saxophone was never really popular up until the jazz age. When the saxophone gained popularity during this time, jazz is also known to be the musical standpoint in where we have the turning point from classical music to now more modern music of our time. The saxophone is also a mimic to a rebellious spirit, just as the jazz age was. The saxophone grew fame for the jazz, and on so forth, manufacturers for the saxophone came to be. One of the four main ones are Selmer, Canon, Kahn, Yamaha, and many others. Another thing to better understand the saxophone is knowing its musical characteristics. While we have the alto saxophone and the bass saxophone keyed in E flat, the soprano and tenor saxophone are keyed in B flat. The most common of the saxophones is the alto saxophone that has a dark and low and high register, mostly being known as a middle voice, one that can be sound in both high and low. Next we have the soprano saxophone, invented to mimic that of the clarinet, which is in a higher register. And then we have the tenor saxophone, an iconic instrument for jazz and blues. The tenor saxophone was invented to be that of a middle voice, but with a lower register. The tenor saxophone is one of the most powerful instruments of the saxophone family. And then we have the bass saxophone. That was invented to be that of a baritone or tuba for woodwinds. The bass saxophone is also known to be the bass. With these saxophones' uniqueness and part in musical literature, it is truly a staple. With these four instruments and their uniqueness, they can also be played in orchestras, which is not very common for woodwinds. In orchestras, you have mostly your violinists and string instruments, your percussion, and brass, mostly including that of trumpets, maybe one or two tubas, and trombones. But with the invention of the saxophone and its ability to mimic brass, it led a pathway for all woodwind instruments to now join orchestras. Today, in modern times, we are now seeing woodwind instruments being put more into popular music. That known as Shakira, most famous song, Mr. Saxo Beat, is an iconic now song that features saxophone. And also others like Thrift Shop by Macklemore also has the iconic saxophone as one of its features. With the saxophone's now growing popularity in modern music, it is important to understand where it came from and its purposes. The saxophone is one of the staples in music literature, not only for its uniqueness in tone and intonation, but it's also for its style, and that its musician itself can be proud of. Thank you for your time for listening to the history of the saxophone, created by Adolphe Sax in 1814.